All right, welcome back to Questing Beast. I'm Ben, and today we are looking at this review copy I was sent of Into the Odd by Chris McDowell. I've actually known about this game for quite a long time, although I only owned a PDF copy previously. Back when I was starting to get into the OSR, Into the Odd was hugely influential on me in terms of helping me understand how the OSR worked and what a minimalistic, tight little game could do in terms of giving you a very focused and optimized OSR type game. It was a big influence on Maze Rats as well. Let's look inside and see what we get. Well, first of all, let's just look at the construction. This is a print-on-demand version that you can get from Drive-Thru RPG. I'll put a link down in the description below. Originally, it was published through Lost Pages in a slightly better constructed version, but now it is only available through print-on-demand. And that just became available, which is why I'm doing a review of it now, since the previous version went out of print some time ago. So it has some great abstract art that really evokes the weird feeling of danger and strangeness that you're supposed to get from playing this game. So what are you? You're a dungeon crawler, since that's basically what this is designed for. You only have 3 abilities, strength, dexterity, and willpower, each of which is rolled with 3d6. And it's a roll under system. So whenever you try and do something, you make a save, and you're trying to roll a d20 at or under your ability. There's a great character creation system right here. Basically what you do to figure out what your starting package is you look at your hit points, because your hit points are 1d6 to begin with. And then you also look at your highest ability score. And then you simply look at this grid and you figure out what you start with. So if you have a very low ability score and you have very low hit points, it's compensated, in other words, by getting a lot of great weapons and great equipment. For example, this one gives you a sword, a pistol, modern armor, and you can sense nearby unearthly beings, which is incredibly useful. Or, for example, this one, you get a musket, a hatchet, a hawk, and an arcanum, which is a powerful magical device. On the other hand, if you have a lot of hit points or very high ability scores, you might get a mace and a pigeon, and you're disfigured. So much less useful. You're going to have to be much more creative in terms of figuring out how to use what you've got. And there's a wide variety of things here in terms of useful dungeoneering equipment that requires creativity in order to use. That's really great. So playing the game, these are the rules of the game right here. They fit on one page. Basically, it works like you would expect a dungeon crawler to do, except that one of the big changes is that there are no 2-hit rolls. So whenever you would make an attack against someone, you simply roll your weapon's damage die and do that much damage directly to their hit points. This makes attacks go much more quickly. It really speeds up combat, and it pushes things towards the point where you have to consider, should I back out? Have I gone too far? Should I try and press forward and hopefully not die? It pushes you to that decision point much more quickly than other games, which is really great. What happens when you run out of hit points is that any excess damage is applied directly to your strength score. And if that happens, then you must make a strength save to see if you pass out or not. This system, the way that it's set up this way, means that characters aren't necessarily going to die right off the bat, even though they have low hit points, but you are going to see players passing out quite frequently if you're not careful. And having players fall unconscious means that there's going to be more strategic choices that you're going to have to make. As your players start dropping, you have to try and grab them and drag them to safety while fending off whatever's trying to kill you. And if you manage to actually have them rest in safety for a brief amount of time, then their HP goes back up to full, although their strength remains damaged, which means that if they take more damage in the future, then making that strength save is going to get harder and harder. It's a great, simple little system. Some quick little systems for making reaction rolls and morale, all based on the save system. Character advancement. There's a couple basic levels. At each level, you gain 1d6 extra hit points. And you can make a d20 roll for each ability score that may possibly increase it by 1. So, for example, novices, that's where you start. Professionals have survived at least 1 expedition. Experts have survived 3 since reaching professional level. Veterans have survived 5 expeditions since becoming an expert and have taken on an apprentice. So it ties you in with hirelings and with interactions with other people in the world. And masters, you have an apprentice of at least expert level, and you've survived a dangerous expedition with them since reaching veteran level. So you actually have to level up an apprentice. How do you run large organizations? There's an easy system for running detachments and small armies, which is pretty neat. And we have 3 pages of Arcana, which are interesting magical devices that require some creativity to be used effectively. And so we start out with some fairly simple ones, like the Tyrant's Rod. Order a target to drop, fall, flee, or halt unless they pass a will save, or maybe a phase key, phase through a wall or floor with any objects you are carrying. And then they become slowly more complex and more powerful. Powers you can barely control, and powers you shouldn't control. So some very powerful ones might include the Space Folding Cube. You and up to 1 companion are teleported to a location you have seen before. Or maybe the Storm Throne. You turn into a bolt of lightning, moving at impossible speed to a specified location you can see. Anyone you pass through takes D10 damage, ignoring armor. Of course, as you acquire and start using more and more powerful Arcana, then you're going to attract attention. People are probably going to want to try and take that from you. And all of these are very different. They're full of flavor, and they're not just damage-dealing items. A lot of them do deal damage, but for the most part, they have weird effects that are going to make the game a little bit more interesting. And they're going to affect the environment. They're going to force you to think about how to use them. That's really excellent. That's what good items should be in an OSR game. We have a long example of play, which makes things very clear if there's any confusion over that 1 page of rules. We have some advice for running the game that is very succinct and clear. Into the Odd is kind of the gold standard for this. It was my big inspiration when I was writing Maze Rats, and I was trying to distill the OSR down to a set of simple principles that were easy to digest and follow. Chris McDowell has been huge on that front. You see some of that in this book, but also on his blog. He details a lot more of that. If I recall correctly, he is in fact creating a supplement for this called Electric Bastion Land, which is going to be the setting that this is in. And it's going to provide tons, like a good 100 character backgrounds, each of which have separate tables to roll on to give you tons of character flavor. And also provide lots more concrete advice that he's been developing ever since Into the Odd came out, which came out some time ago. So how to create encounters, some ideas for interesting monsters, all of which are very weird. For example, the Bone Crawler, driven to implant a host, attacks with claws, and climbs walls and ceilings effortlessly. Anyone dealt critical damage, in other words, if their strength is damaged because their hit points are run out, is pinned down as the crawler dislocates its joints and enters the victim's mouth. On the crawler's next turn, it enters the victim's body, killing them, and enters a month-long hibernation state before emerging in its greater form. So it is kind of a horror game in terms of how dangerous many of the monsters are, but that's appropriate for the OSR. Some interesting treasures that you can find, how to run traps, obstacles, and hazards over on this page, including his principles of traps should be fairly obvious, and your goal as a player should be to find a way to avoid them rather than just trying to spot them. The Odd World. So this takes place in Bastion, which is the last city of mankind, a huge, chaotic, Kafkaesque metropolis full of a late modern level of technology. Although I believe in Electric Bastion Land, the supplement for this, the technology level becomes more modern and has electricity, as the name implies. In this version, it's more steampunk. A bit like something from a Dickens novel, really. But with other weird technology mixed in, strange alien stuff found underground. Because there's a huge labyrinth beneath Bastion Land, or beneath the city of Bastion, that is full of weird tunnels and time distortions and monsters. And that's what you're exploring for the most part. It comes with an adventure, the Iron Corral. It's a great little dungeon. There's plenty of interesting effects that you can find in the different rooms. And some weird monsters. It even comes with the Hex Crawl, where every hex is detailed with something interesting there and with some random encounters. So you can easily throw players into a campaign. There's enough information here for several sessions at least. The Fallen Marsh is the Hex Crawl. And Hope's End Port, which is a city on the other end of the Hex Crawl that you can arrive at. At the end, we have an Oddpendium, which is a set of excellent random tables that, again, was a big inspiration for me while I was writing Maze Rats, that allows you to generate stuff that you might need very quickly. So generating NPCs You have your occupations, capabilities, manners, connections. These are all D100 tables, or you would roll using a D100. What happened to these guys? What are the streets like in Bastion that you're on? Is there a link to the underground and what that might be? What's the quickest route across town? Bastion's greatest businesses, insane council decisions, weird creature inspirations. These are all great. Their creatures might be reptilian or living rock or stinking filth, colossal, all brain, etc. And each monster gets its own twist that keeps everything interesting and surprising. What's beyond the darkness? Some stuff you can throw into your dungeons. Some treasures. There you go. Very light, very fast, very deadly. If you're just getting into the OSR, it's hard to go wrong with Into the Odd. So I strongly recommend this. Now, before we wrap up, I want to show you one other thing, which is this book here. So this is Auditional Materials. So this is a collection of some extra material that came out after Into the Odd and put together by a variety of fans. And this is available also in PDF or in print form, but it is pay what you want. So if you're going to get Into the Odd, I would definitely pick up this. There's really no downside. It comes with a Abbey, so a little adventure here, all laid out for you. Some new Arcana ideas. A version of Into the Odd that turns it into more of a fantasy adventure game, so less steampunk, called Odd Dungeons, with a new table to that you can roll on when you create a character. That gives you new equipment and new quirks that fit more in with a fantasy game. Another little dungeon called the Nightlight Circus. A version of the game that makes it more cyberpunk, called Cyber London Odd Hack. And look at this. So not to toot my own horn, but this is the first version of Maze Rats. When I was creating, what I was doing is I was looking for something very much like Into the Odd, because I wanted a game that was light and fast. And Into the Odd really hooked me, but I wanted it to be a fantasy version. So I wrote this. The very first version of Maze Rats was in fact an Into the Odd hack and was published here. So if you want to see the origin of Maze Rats, definitely pick this game up. There's a lot of similarities, although it's, like I said, based on Into the Odd system. You have all the random tables that I fleshed out even more when I wrote the full version of it. And again, 2 pages of rules, everything jammed in there, so there's no page flipping. And a whole bunch of D100 tables. So for generating magic, for generating your own spells. And then I have little generators here for creating magic items and monsters using the tables right over here. So I still think it's useful. I still think it's a lot of fun. And Into the Odd is my preferred version of a light, fast dungeon crawler when I'm not using Maze Rats. So strongly recommend Into the Odd. Great for people just getting into the OSR. Great for people who want a fast game, who don't want to do a lot of prep, because you can create characters in this game in just minutes, which is a huge advantage to it. So if you're going to have a Halloween night game with some people who have never played D&D before, Into the Odd is a perfect choice for that. Anyway, that's it for this review. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you have not subscribed yet. I have tons of reviews of OSR games, and you can check them all out and keep updated when new games come out. You can also join me on Patreon if you would like to support me making more videos like this one. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you guys later.